I Welcome everyone to our December 15th, 2025 Board Strategic Planning meeting. It is 9:10. Sorry for the delay. We do have three commissioners are present. Commissioner Kearns is on Zoom. Commissioner Waldron, myself are in the room, and we will be joined when a different meeting is ending for Commissioner French and Commissioner Jordan. So we will though go ahead and get started and not delay any longer. And we'll start with Scott Chesney.
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time. This, as Churchill probably said at one point, this is the an interesting benchmark, but it is really kind of the end of the beginning. We've come a long way in the last 3 years to look at the growth patterns of the future 20 years. And we're here today to put that in the context of the environmental impact statement and its impacts on the urban growth area. Some of this information is you've heard a little bit before. We're going to summarize it for the public and for the record. But getting started, the slide you can see here is how we've described this process is a set of bookends. A no action alternative and the 2 action alternatives. And as long as you, the commissioners, pick a preferred alternative somewhere between the bookends, the study will be able to accommodate that without any future delays. If, for example, something was decided outside of those bookends, we simply have to go back and start more of that over. Next, please. The parameters you can see here, as we said, this study doesn't bind the commissioners. But it does provide guidance for a decision to be made that will happen from that infill or growth alternatives. Next, please. And here are those parameters. You can see within the bookends, the alternative 1 is an infill, which we'll talk about in more detail. Alternative 2 is a modified version of zoning and development regs, and also continuing potential expansion or at least modification of the urban growth area boundary. Next, please. So alternative 1, very simply, is an infill only, if you will. This is an analysis that would be done to say, how can the county change its development regulations without changing or adding any area for growth to accommodate 34,000 persons in the unincorporated UGA. And what we've done is very simply keep the existing zoning categories for the most part and simply change the density numbers of them. Next, please. What that looks like is this. You can see the bold numbers are traditional zones, and this is kind of a clarification. This is what we call assumed density, and this is a built-out density. As you know, the LDR currently runs from 2 units an acre to 8 units an acre, and potentially up to 10 if duplexes are included. The legislature has changed the parameters on that for cities and counties over the last 3 sessions to push duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes to be allowed anywhere single-family detached is allowed. We continue that philosophy. We would expect, instead of a roughly built out 4.5 units an acre, probably something's closer to 6 units an acre. And so that's the number we use for calculation. We bumped up medium density residential to 16 from a max of 15, mostly because it already develops at pretty much its capacities now. And the same with high density residential, which is not very often used in the unincorporated UGAs, sometimes kind of spot projects more than you would consider, downtown group. And then this does consider residential in the non-residential zones where it is currently allowed. So the mixed use and the commercial zones. Next, please. All that leads to this capacity table. And I realize it's hard to read all of these urban growth areas on the screen. So we highlighted 3 of them. where we expect to see the most growth over the next 20 years, the North Metro, the Valley, and West Plains. And importantly, the 5 columns talk about projected growth. And then the 4 after that are the no action capacity, the alternative 1 capacity, and then the net results from the no action or the alternative 1. And you can see that in North Metro and the Valley UGA, there's a considerable shortage of population capacity if we use the no action or if we continue our traditional density patterns of development. If we increase the density, we can create a surplus capacity. The overall shortage from land capacity analysis is between 6,000, 6,500 units, and that would be if we simply used up the existing UGA in total at its assigned densities. This could leave a surplus of as much as 16,000 population. And then the question for this board and the one we've put in front of the Planning Commission and the Steering Committee is this the pattern of development that we think residents and future residents in Spokane County want to see? So the one of the things that we're going to also look at in this is the Alt-1 numbers presume that the land capacity analysis that was adopted 2 years ago remains valid in today's market. You've heard, the steering committee's heard, we've heard plenty of communications from the builders, realtors, land coalition folks, that the land capacity analysis doesn't reflect the reality of the market, particularly in what's called the partially used lands, which are generally those that have a residence on them, but might be a large lot. It might be a 2-acre lot, it might be a 5-acre lot. In the land capacity analysis, if there was the ability to divide a property into 8 lots, it was considered potentially buildable in the future. There's also a fairly easy rebut to that someone with a large, and there was a value of homes too. If it was an extremely valuable home, it was unlikely that the project would redevelop. And so we will go back and refine those a little bit in this study as we move on. But generally, this is the basic numbers that we're looking for in the alternative 1. Next, please. Yes.
Could I ask?
Yes.
So the ones you have bolded are the areas where we have the most capacity. Is that why you bolded those?
They're generally the ones that are expected to grow the most. And remember, these are just what we call the UGA polygons. Some of them are really quite small, and some of them, like North Metro, are really quite a lot of land areas. So it's not surprising they would be.
So just so I understand, the no action would be like nothing changes. So thus you're showing a deficit then.
Correct.
Of what we need to get to our growth numbers.
We would not have enough land to accommodate.
Except for in the West Plains, there still would be enough. But then what is the difference between, so what's the Alt-1 reserved mean?
That would be the difference between.
Just subtracting.
Yes.
From the capacity.
Those are the net
Okay.
numbers.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
it moves from a net deficit to a net surplus if you increase the densities far enough.
Got it.
Next, please. This is the other constraint or parameter added to all cities and counties by the legislature in one of their last sessions, House Bill 1220, which moved us from being charged to simply make accommodations for affordable housing to very specific housing allocations by income band based on the area median income. The chart at the bottom of this slide shows those number of units that are allocated to the unincorporated county in those income bands. And you can see quite a lot, even in that 0 to 30, it's more than 4,000 units being allocated to the county. This is a significant challenge for all of us, all cities, towns, and counties, but especially for counties. Housing at these levels is very rarely found on the periphery, on the edges of counties. Historically, those are traditionally suburban densities. As we said, 4.5 units an acre, single family detached housing. And now the mandate is we must accommodate this income band in the unincorporated UGA. That is a challenge from a policy and a regulatory perspective, to be sure. But now we have one case against the city of Mercer Island where they were appealed for the way they handled their affordable housing by income bands. And the Growth Management Hearings Board sustained the appeal, saying they had not gone far enough. And that was a surprise to us. It was a surprise to Commerce because the goal of the House bill was to provide a regulatory structure that wouldn't prohibit housing being built in that area. It's the simplest way to put it. It didn't say it had to be built. It didn't say you were going to be measured on the number of units constructed. It said you had to have a policy that did not discriminate, did not prohibit this housing being built. The Mercer Island case seems to have gone so far as to say the city did not make adequate implementation accommodation to actually achieve that housing. That seems like a whole new step that nobody anticipated. We are working with Commerce, who's trying to write new guidance for that. I guess I would call it on the fly based on that appeal. So we also don't know where the appeal may land in the future, but at least at the moment, this is a benchmark we didn't anticipate, and it's going to be a significant challenge.
Question for Scott.
Sorry.
So could that just be a jurisdiction adopting some policies or, incentives or different things like that?
Well, that's the distinction. It's one thing to have the policy. That's where we were headed. We thought that's what 1220 wanted us to do. The appeal seemed to suggest that they did not actually assign resources to implement the policy. And that was not something we anticipated. And so, yeah, in this case, you would have to look for how could this be built? Is it the municipality buying property and providing that to a not-for-profit developer? Is it a land trust? Is it, in other words, what are the tools available to say you can actually achieve these numbers? And that was something we didn't anticipate. And it's not just Spokane County. That's going to be a challenge for everybody if that appeal is upheld.
When will we hear about that?
No idea. When it winds its way through.
I just wonder if they didn't. I wonder if there's like a happy medium where they just didn't do anything to show that there is policies in place to support affordable housing.
There is some speculation that the city didn't take it seriously and lumped all of these lower income categories in their transit-oriented downtown, just put them all right there. But that's speculation on our part. We don't know their intent. So next, please. So then moving into alternative 2, this is the piece that has come the furthest down these last couple of months. There really are sort of 2 options in alternative 2. One is looking at the change of zoning, not necessarily just upzoning the traditional categories, but this is where we're creating that neighborhood residential and neighborhood commercial zones and applying them within the existing urban growth area for infill and then for external areas as new growth options. Next, please. The parameters, if you will, or guiding principles for the neighborhoods. You've heard us talk about these now for a couple of years, but it's encouraging mixes of uses. It's having amenities inside of neighborhoods. The idea of creating, both more desirable but walkable neighborhoods for some amenities. Also, the ability of having jobs, light, low intensity businesses that are not creating a nuisance, don't have a lot of shipping and receiving. Could be within these neighborhoods as well. The other side of that, the neighborhood commercial, is more heavily commercial, but now would allow a range of neighborhoods and would be designed so that those, in this case, multifamily structures would be better connected into that instead of walled off or set over on the side. This is partially in response to, again, 1220, but also House Bill 1181, which is a climate resiliency bill. If in fact we're able to implement this kind of zoning, it will reduce vehicle miles traveled. It'll reduce some sort of vehicle trips and therefore some positive impact on air quality as well. So there's good reasons for doing this other than just good design. Explains. So what does that look like? These are a set of bullets that will describe how this translates into development code. Blended densities, and that again is a refresher. That is the sense of allowing a range of architecture, a range of structures from single family detached to modest multifamily 9 to 12 unit buildings, all in the same zone by right and laid out by design and development standards. Adding requirements for amenities to, it's kind of the carrot and stick side. If we're going to provide market flexibility for investment and development, what we want to get back from that is a higher quality of development than just a blasted out subdivision of lots with absolutely no amenities around it. And key to this is really the last 2-3 bullets. In all of our codes now, and traditionally in most codes, there are dimensional standards. Sometimes they're setbacks, sometimes they're lot sizes. And what we've seen, really since COVID, is the change of how that construction is happening, and with the land prices in particular going up so significantly in the last 5 years. Back to that housing slide, it is virtually impossible to construct a housing for ownership opportunities at those lower income levels. So what we're hearing from designers and builders is, what if we eliminate lot sizes instead of have minimums? What if we eliminate dimensional standards and let that be a function of urban and neighborhood design? It's been done in other places. It's sometimes incorporated in things called new urbanism or form-based coding. So it's not really a risk. It's been tried and used in other areas, but it does provide an opportunity that if this is to be done, there may be a chance to have an ownership product for those that are in as low as the 50% to 80%, 80 to 100% bracket. Right now, it's almost impossible to have ownership, which condemns all of that income bracket into rental for forever. There's no solution for that. So this would be a big change to our zone.
Commissioner Kearns?
Yeah, Scott, am I remembering correctly, the elimination of the minimum lot sizes, is that what Liberty Lake has done already?
They have done that in their river district. That's correct.
Okay, not citywide, just the river district?
I believe only in the river district, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
And then how does that work for, again, as you know, in the valley, there's a lot of homes that are on acres and all of that. And then you've got, a swath of land that's got 5 acres that could get developed. How does that work if? Because right now, I mean, as you know, I get a lot of complaints,
yes,
and rightfully so, where they've got an acre home that's now backed up to 8 homes right behind them.
We've seen that together.
So yes, so we talked about graduated zoning.
Yes, and what this would do for the Valley UGA in particular is recognize that some of those pieces are already there. The rezone for all of that would then make any future development blend in with what's going on. So the zoning on all of it would change into this neighborhood approach so that it would be more focused on urban design. We know there are some builders and engineers that say it can't work. We've got to have we can only build 3,000 square foot lots. That's the only thing we can sell. Our perspective is they're looking at it from the wrong perspective and saying, well, you're trying to shoehorn a product into a neighborhood that doesn't fit. And so this is a way of laying out what those expectations are, so that they can know that before the land is purchased, before they start designing it, and then they can find that price point to hit that particular piece. It could still have some very modest homes being built in areas that are surrounded by larger lots, but there will be an urban design component to it. So it's not, as you said, it's not 6 lots backing up to the back lot of 1 2-acre parcel and looking like a bunch of small garages back there. It would have blended buffers and potentially bigger units. gradually coming down to a pocket where you can have more affordable properties, you know, that are somewhat separated from there. So it's been done, it's been tried in many places. It does work. It requires some developers to think of a slightly new way of doing business, but in those we've talked to from the Home Builders Association and a few individual builders about this concept, we've gotten general support. It's like they'll scratch their head for a minute and they'll go, I think we can probably do this. I think we can adjust and make this happen. So we're fairly comfortable that this is worth testing.
I had a new developer, you know, was someone who actually talked to me about it, so, but thought it was a good idea, so.
Yes, please. And you've seen this sketch before, but we brought it back because again, this is that idea of a blended neighborhood. A single family detached, some attached houses, some small multifamily, potential small shops, green space, grid connectivity so that there is better access egress for just normal daily use, also for emergency transport. You're not confined to the end of a cul-de-sac. Some of the projects that are listed on the left side of that could be, you know, live work units with small storefronts in the front and a proprietor or small business living above it. So again, this is a doable thing. Next, please. And we've got 3 places that we're going to recommend studying for this, and they're on the West Plains, in our UG in the West Plains, because that has capacity and can benefit from this, because as you know from comp plan amendments, even in the last 5 years, there have been, you know, a spot here that goes from low density to medium or low density to high density, and they're not connected, they're not thought about, they're not talked about how they integrate in any fashion, and this gives us a chance to add that structure to that design.
Chair. Just a quick question. So what do you think is the minimum amount of land that you would need to have the space for, you know, a profitable neighborhood project?
That sketch is probably a 40-acre parcel, the previous slide. That's a very manageable size, but you can make this work on probably a 20-acre piece. And to the chair's comment before, if you've got some of these other pieces in place and you create maybe an 80-acre sort of virtual fence around it and say we're going to redo the interior of this, you can add this to, you can take those much smaller lots and make them elements of this so that the whole can also work. So it is somewhat scalable. But if you were starting with kind of raw land, you'd want 20 acres or more.
So in terms of like smaller lots that you would purchase to try and put together a project, would we need to change any of our regulations or codes to make that easier for a developer to be able to kind of merge some smaller lots together?
Yes, we would. And that would be something we would do with the LDR zone by itself. If there's just a 2-acre parcel or a 5-acre parcel or something, that's not going to provide a lot of economic diversity, but yet that 5-acre parcel could hold 20 homes, you know, if it was had some density to it. So some of that would be, in a sense, left alone to just fill in the grid.
I see, okay.
But if you had enough room to work with, then this new overlay approach would give you that guidance from the beginning. And for example, that, you know, the slide here, some of that yellow, which is already zoned residential, low, medium, and high density residential, some of that has been platted, some of that not. The lilac color that's under the hatched area is, for the most part, what you saw in 2022 as Comprehensive Plan Amendment 2. That was 110 acres that wanted to go into mixed use and had a lot of opposition, notably from DOT on pedestrian connections across the Geiger Bridge. And so it got put on the shelf. This is tailor-made for that. So you've got more than 100 acres in there. You could do the mixed use. You can put all these pieces in there. It already has industry, motorsports, the distributor, manufacturing's in the area. So it's a great candidate to use this approach as opposed to just multifamily. Next, please. Moving to the southwest. This is another one of those areas, some of, again, the lilac color was platted residential during the 2005, 2007 period when your predecessors allowed residential in the light industrial zone. And it was entitled and it's stuck there. The Aspen Park subdivision is part of that. On the lower edge of that is an elementary school and an existing subdivision. So this is one that would fill in the gaps with this approach to zoning and allow for some higher density, but more importantly, the connectivity. Those comp plan amendments all dropped in on whatever piece of land they were doing, and they connected to an arterial, but almost made no possible connections for a real local street grid in there. And this would give you a chance to build that grid on top of that. Next, please. And then the last one in this sequence is the West Terraces area. Former golf course is in the lower center part of that slide. Immediately south of this area is the park that the county is building. So we're adding that feature into this already. This is also an area that has been terribly impacted by stormwater and poor stormwater management, high aquifer levels, high basalt levels, making it very, very hard to get drainage through here. And again, the design aspects of this are not going to change the geology of the area, but it does allow you to plan and build for it, knowing what's coming on. And the county, through actions you've taken, is already putting in, like $6 million into stormwater management out here. So this is a way of organizing it for future growth, where you can take all of that into account. That makes sense. Next, please. The next version of this is more of an infill basis. And so we've taken these sketches from work that we are doing in concert with Spokane Transit to look at how you can build more density and use into transit corridors as they evolve. That is North Division in the image on the left. In the upper left quadrant of that is Whitworth University. The upper right quadrant is Rockwood Retirement. And give you kind of a perspective of that. And this shows a series of infill buildings that are taking use of what are now parking lots. So it can provide an infill approach to this. This would be the neighborhood commercial version, not the neighborhood residential, where you're building around existing institutional structures. Next, please. And that would be used again, and this is in the upper, the north infill area, the UGA North Metro. This is roughly that same area that you saw in the sketch on the previous slide. The light yellow in the center of that diagram is in and around the Rockwood Retirement Complex. Whitworth is off to the left or the west of that. But you can also see the variance in zoning colors already in place on this map. Everything from low density residential to high, mixed uses, commercial uses, neighborhood commercial uses. So again, we think this is a good candidate to unify that all under this new neighborhood commercial so that you can plan, build, and develop in that in a way that makes some sense without having to change the comp plan, change the zoning, and provides an incentive for investment. Next, please. And then moving a little bit to the east, again, the corridor there, this is the beginning or the kind of the western edge of the Hastings Farwell area, where there has been a number of comp plan amendments over these last few years to move lower density single family development into multifamily. Again, you can see the mixes of zoning uses here that would be unified under the neighborhood commercial and provide both that structure and guidance, but also offer a chance for investment that right now requires that almost 2-year wait for a comp plan amendment and a zoning change. And then, as this board declared in 2020, the first housing emergency is hard to effect a solution to an emergency if the fastest you can get there is more than 2 years away. And so this whole infill side of our plan update is designed to make it easier and faster for investment to build to a market and try to satisfy mostly that housing efficiency. Yes, please. And finally, in this series, Newport Highway, that's continuing east in that same corridor. You can see Hastings and Farwell both coming up there. The light or the lilac area on the southeast is the Mead Works project that Greenstone is working on. Costco is right there at the roundabout. To the north of that will be major medical center from Multicare and Shriners Hospital. And Spokane Transit is putting in a station, much like Moran Station on the South Hill. So reflecting that this will be a transit node, heavy employment. It'll have lots of walkability. We're also working separately. There's a triangle parcel on the north side of Newport Highway on the slide, just to the left of the legend box up there. DOT has surplus right of way up there. It looks like a triangular parcel, but it's actually right of way. We are working with them to help them find a master developer for that and turn that into a mixed use project. Presumably even, pedestrian grade separation across Newport Highway back to the medical center, back to the transit center. And then let that fill in the red triangle directly across from Costco. Before all of this comp plan started, that was being proposed for mini storage, right along the highway, which we see all the time. That developer is one we've talked to about, why don't you wait a little bit and see how this plays out, because there could simply be a higher and better use, and that's a pretty big chunk of land. So there's an opportunity there for a little bit project. So that's what we think this infill approach can go. Next, please. The last part, or part two of alt two, if you will, involves modifications to the urban growth area boundary. There are rules to that, as Spokane County is painfully aware from our past, and we're being very careful to stay within those guardrails, if you will. This is from the WAC, and when it talks about the idea of trying to accommodate your growth within your existing area to fully utilize concurrency infrastructure and things that are there. But the last sentence on that, if the counties or cities find that increasing the capacity is not feasible or appropriate based on evidence, then it should pursue expanding area for future development. That is the guideline we will use for creating some evidence in our EIS study to be able to support that. Next, please. And then this second part of the RCW talks about, again, if all of the other things are still the same, but you see how the patterns of growth have changed from the last planning period, this is the authority that gives you a chance to move that around to better fit the path of development. And that's important because, yes, the UGA polygons that we have were all drawn essentially in 2001, and the markets have changed dramatically. Human settlement has changed dramatically. So this is the tool we would use to shift those around to keep growth in the pattern of development, even if we were not otherwise expanding the urban growth area. Next, please. Yeah, to do that, you must meet these criteria. Or I should say, these are the statutory criteria that we would look at. Every parcel would have to be within this set of parameters. And nothing in that is truly unreasonable, really. Next, please. So we go from statutory then to local. And these are the additional criteria that we've used to start our analysis for parcels that are, for the most part, in the urban reserve, zero zoning, but not exclusively. But they need to touch the existing UGA. They need to have some initial access to roads. You can see in that kind of white highlight box, the detailed analysis of concurrency will be somewhat part of the EIS itself. But this was how we at least set the parameter for getting these started. Here we picked a 10-acre size as a starting point, and as you saw from the statutory criteria preceding this, making sure that no parcel is centered in a critical area. And then some optional criteria, those were mandatory, and then some optional ones you can see here as well. Next, please. The last one on that,
Scott,
yes.
so what about water and sewer?
In the first round, sewer typically is one of the infrastructure capital facilities that you have to have. We couldn't, for both time and money, we couldn't study every parcel in detail. So what we did is we talked with our wastewater folks here and also at Liberty Lake Water and Sewer and asked about capacity. And we put the county, our capacity allocation is about 34,000. We asked Lewis, can we handle as much as 60 or 70,000 new people in the county's treatment plant? And he said, yes, we have that capacity. The county owned treatment facility is an 8 million gallon day facility operating at about 7.5 right now. The remaining capacity is in the city owned facility that the county has purchased a capacity in, and we would use that facility for this growth to fill it. So the reason I
So
said
there's capacity, but what about like the infrastructure to get to the system?
that's the next slide, and you'll see on the kind of the following slide that this first analysis got us down to a little less than 3,000 acres. As we look at this, we think we really can justify maybe 400 to 500 acres. So that next round is, now that we know there's capacity in the system, how close are you to an interceptor? Because yes, that will have a big factor if you're 1,000 feet from an interceptor as opposed to 200 feet from an interceptor.
Mr. Finch.
I believe the capacity for our treatment facility for the valley is 11 million gallons per day, not 8.
Okay.
And stuff. And so when I talked to Ben, we still got another 3 million beyond the 8 that we can do before we end up having to expand the facility or do something different with Saltese or something else. So that number was a little bit different, but the other thing that you haven't factored in is Airway Heights wastewater treatment facility.
Yes, that's true. It factors into the West Plains side of this, but we didn't factor it in upfront.
Right.
In upfront. We do know that the county's facility was built to be modular and has room for three more 5 million gallon a day segments that could be built into it. We wanted to try to use the infrastructure that we already have and not force an expansion before it was needed. So if it's 11 instead of 8, so much the better. And Liberty Lake is at 2 million, and then they're using 1, I think, or something like that. They're using about half of their capacity now. So that doesn't factor into this very much. There's almost no part of a UGA expansion that would be served by Liberty Lake, except for one area that we'll show you in a couple slides. But you're right, the moment we didn't factor in the capacity at Airway Heights, we took it for granted that as a fairly new facility, it can probably handle Airway Heights and maybe its environs. It'll be in the next round that we will do that more detailed analysis. So that's the slide Ron has up, kind of talks about that. The first one, gave us 2,800 acres. We took a look at essentially the no action alternative again, and said if we change nothing but build at the patterns and densities that we've done historically for 20 years, we would fill up the remaining urban growth area and here we had about 300 to 400 acres. We will be testing, maybe as much as 500 acres and then moving that around for your consideration as the EIS works its way through. But we're thinking that that somewhere in that 300 to 500 is going to be a number we can defend, either moving things or adding things. Next, please. So right now, we started looking at all of these parcels. We then started looking at where they're already near some of amenities and things that we could build into either of those neighborhood classifications. In other words, giving them a higher priority for successful development. This developed a total of 14 parcels, 340 acres. And what we want as we start looking at these maps is to recognize we're not making a recommendation to you that these 14 parcels should be the ones studied by our EIS team. Rather, these would be considered like the center parcels of a cluster. That idea being that cluster, that, you know, that one parcel may have 10 parcels around it that are all useful in terms of improving the transportation infrastructure or something else. And this would be a chance to leverage those in a way so that you're getting maximum return on capital facilities and other concurrency for them. So it's again, a sorting mechanism. Next, please. We're going to loop around our urban growth areas in a little bit. This is the North Metro. The colors, the yellow, orange, red, recognize how more of those criteria for inclusion. The green recognize that they meet the maximum of those. But from a study area perspective, the green parcels in that north tip, one of those is a pretty good sized piece of land. The one to the south is also common ownership. The ones off of Newport Highway and the Little Spokane off 395, the new North Spokane corridor, would be looked at as a potential cluster, not as individual parcels. And even though if you look to the west a little bit, you can see the white gap around the city of Spokane, 5 Mile Prairie. There are dozens of parcels in there that don't individually meet some of the criteria, but collectively could be good candidates. Particularly since the 2 orange parcels in the middle of 5 Mile Prairie right now don't touch the city of Spokane, but the platted subdivisions in between there were those that Commissioner French will remember during our settlement mediation hearings. That was the zombie plats that our predecessor thought had written that they had expired years ago, but the developer brought them back, and the hearing examiner found that they were in fact vested. And so those will come into the UGA automatically as a result of the settlement agreement with FutureWise and the plaintiffs, which means now those 2 orange parcels, which are 40 acres each, are touching the UGA, and our transportation folks like those because that will help provide some east-west connectivity in that area. So as we come down into the details, we're hoping from you today to also provide any direct guidance if you see priorities or have thoughts about that. Then this will be going off to our study team. So, and one thing, just to kind of call it out, the large red area on the upper left of that is outside of the city of Spokane limits. The Vista power line goes through the lower portion of that. That's about 600 acres or so of available land. That is well large enough to be its own village under neighborhood zoning. So that could be a consideration in that sense. It does suffer from transportation challenges trying to come into the metro core. That's right. Yes, sir.
So when we were doing the initial allocations, that large red area there, we put an urban reserve because you mentioned that transportation is really lacking to get out of that area. And there was plans to build another exit off of there that never happened.
Right.
So it would be difficult to say 20 years later when nothing has happened, why to bring that in now? We didn't bring it in before.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And that's, that is why we go through this exercise. It's what's changed, what makes. Yeah. Next, please. Mr. CUNY, this gets right at your thoughts and concerns from before. This is the Metro UGA off the valleys, particularly the southeast side of the valley, with lots and lots of smaller parcels that are on the edges of some of the UGA out there now. Again, you can see the green ones as being the core to some areas for other development. And yet there's a cluster of parcels again, just to the left of the legend signs. That's the Salteast Flats area. We did a UGA swap there a couple of years ago for the high school. That's where the Doris Morrison Center is built. And one of the things, again, our transportation folks thought about that is if that were to come in, it would provide another east-west connection that is lacking in that southern part of the area. So it would improve the transportation network. So again, those parcels as a cluster are probably more than value than they are as individual, as individual parcels. On the north side, there's two pretty large areas. The one on the northeast, just off the river, which has the one green parcel in the middle, but all of the red around it. That is vacant land for the most part, except for the white little gap in it right up against the river that's developed in the residential. It is adjacent to the Otis Orchards area. This is property that the city of the Valley has recently identified as potential non-residential expansion from their perspective. On the left side of that sort of dogleg parcel on the upper part closer to Trent is a Vista property. So some of that's not going to develop, but it probably makes it a better candidate for non-residential than for residential. To the north of that, off of Trent Road, roughly at Barker, is a plat that first developed in the 1990s. And now the developer wants to bring in the second part of that. And then the adjacent property owner is also interested in developing. It fits a lot of the criteria. It is still somewhat isolated. See a little bit from the map up to the north of it. It is challenging topography. It is very steeply sloped in that area, heavily wooded. There's those constraints. Then moving to the west, you can see one green parcel, which is on Argonne Road, moving up toward Bigelow Gulch. With the completion of Bigelow Gulch, the county's effort over some 20 some years, there will be development pressure in these areas. The bigger red blob, so to speak, is roughly where Bigelow Gulch comes back down to meet Trent. Going up Argonne Road is going to have some pressure going there, as well as back into the city of Spokane and the Beacon Hill area and its Guns Francis. So the area going up toward on Argonne Road to Bigelow Gulch was a significant point of contention in 2015. It was not supported by FutureWise, and it was also not supported by the future hearings. So it's, as Commissioner French said, what's changed? Well, Bigelow Gulch Road has changed, and there's development pressure, and there is available infrastructure in the area. So it's worthy of study. Whether it comes out as one of those 200, 300, 400 acre parcels, we won't know until we get through the draft EIS. Next, please. Moving to the west, the gray area in here is the Moran Prairie Glenrose area off the southeast corner of the city of Spokane. Quite a lot of development over the years has filled in. There are some opportunities right on the edges of that, which really provides quite a lot of capacity. This would be in the city's sewer and water service area. The green parcels in the Glenrose area meet quite a lot of criteria, but are still somewhat disconnected. We also know that much like some parts of 5 Mile Prairie, there's a group of landowners in that Glenrose Carnahan area that are very much in favor of keeping low density rural development and not seeing increased densities. And it is right on the edge of the city. Comes off of 37th Avenue, 22nd Avenue. So logical candidates to study for growth. Next, please. Then moving to the West Plains, our last major study area from the county side. There's several parts of this that are interesting, as we talked about before. We see the West Plains UGA, which has capacity under almost any of our scenarios, as being that good candidate for the residential, neighborhood residential or neighborhood commercial zoning as an infill strategy. So we're not seeing a lot of new land bordering here yet, except some those parcels that you can see to the southwest or southeast of the UGA itself. One that's interesting, not really traditional West Plains, but right above the legend box is about 160 acre project immediately south of the city of Spokane. The north edge of that is is just where Hatch Road comes down and touches 195. This would be an opportunity for, again, for that neighborhood residential, neighborhood commercial zone. The challenges here, certainly Commissioner French knows this very well. Infrastructure, utilities, east-west access is very challenging. However, one of the things we see, you can't really see on this map, but the northern edge of that potential development parcel on 195, if you kind of take your eyeball and just keep moving west, there's a straight line that comes up and connects Arrow Road to the Geiger interchange or the Medical Lake interchange that touches properties on their borders. And so if a transportation plan were to look at that, you'd have to acquire the right of way, of course, but you'd be doing it on property lines and not through the middle of properties. There's only one property in there that we believe that would be split by potential east-west connection. The challenge, as all of us know, is topography, railroads. As you get closer on the eastern side, it would be an expensive connection back to 195, but it is at least feasible for planning purposes. And then that adds some validity to where those development parcels might take place. Sir.
So that, where that red dot is there on 195, that's the property that's right across the 195 from Hatch Road.
Yes.
And in case anybody would like to go down there and look, the minute you hit that interchange, there's a solid rock cliff, probably about 60 or 70 feet tall. And there is no way to get up on top of that other than Cedar Road. And Cedar Road already has a lousy connection into Cheney Spokane. So I mean, I'm really challenged transportation wise. There's no money. There's no state incentive to fix the problem. And there's no developer in revenue to be able to fix the problem because the city refuses to put a TIF in. So I just don't see any of that area in there being able to meet capital facilities plan.
One of the results of a study like this is being able to call out those deficiencies. Say this would have development potential if this were to happen. And so that can kind of set the stage for maybe something, you know, in the next 10 years or so. But yes, we're painfully aware of DOT's opposition for anything on 195 and lack of support for really any solutions happening out there right now.
So I know some of the folks on the steering committee have commented about removing some of the density in that valley area because there is no infrastructure to support any additional development. In fact, the Blue Fern project, their solution was to put more traffic on county roads, and then county didn't get any compensation or mitigation for that. So if we're gonna be the solution for the city on 195, where are we gonna get the money to support that? So I'm just really challenged with additional development in there until, and so the question was, can we actually reduce the population allocation in there until capital facilities plan comes forward and says, here's how we're gonna pay for that stuff.
Actually, Commissioner, we would have to, I mean, that would be our obligation under GMA is if we do this study and find that the capital facilities are lacking, we have to adjust our development projections to match the level of service that we can provide. And so if the county or the state or the city cannot provide that access, then that area essentially comes off the map for future development until those capital facilities are provided. So you're right. We would make that adjustment.
One last thought. So when you look at Sunset Hill and I-90, where Highway 2 connects into I-90, that whole stretch from there all the way down to the viaduct in downtown, starting at about 3:30 in the afternoon and working until about 6:30 at night, is a parking lot. So WashDOT has expressed to me a number of times, when are you going to get housing on the West Plains so that we can remove some of the pressure off of I-90, because the fear is as you hit the viaduct, there's no way to expand it. So what do? You look like Seattle in the I-5 parking lot and stuff, so that I'm anxious for WashDOT to weigh in on the distribution of growth and stuff, because they've got some major problems that they don't have the money to solve.
We've certainly seen that observation in watching the state budget as well. There are big challenges for the capital and transportation budget that weren't there 4 years ago. So you were at the meeting when we were first talking about this. West Plains along with the North Metro are the two major growth areas for the next 20 years, really. And this one is going to be a combination of infill development, particularly south of I-90, but then potential new development. Again, that pressure may suggest that some of those parcels south of the West Terraces area where the county is building its park might be in fact ripe to bring into this for that whole workforce housing piece. The other part that doesn't show on here, because this is depicting urban growth areas, is to immediately adjacent to that, it's the Lambert area around Four Lakes. We want to find a way to provide some increased, in a sense, could that be a small rural or suburban village without having to be in an urban growth area? We're talking about that with Commerce, getting some support for it, but it makes them nervous because it's, well, if Spokane County tries it, somebody else will do it. But the whole idea of having workforce housing out here, it's already there. It's just a matter of letting it increase in intensity a little bit.
One last one till the next one. So there at Four Lakes, you haven't done anything to change or suggest that should be changed from, I think it's real traditional to light industrial. And yet we're getting a lot of interest in that area for light industrial. Can you speak a little bit about that?
You bet. All of those colored parcels off of Medical Lake Road and I-90 at the edge of the southwestern edge of the UGA, those are good candidates for inclusion, but not for residential. Obviously, among other things, are right off the end of the Spokane International Runway. So that is a very good area for industrial or job creation to come in. That goes down to what's now the Highline Grain operation, and that whole corridor, as Craig Road is improved, that interchange is reconfigured to take that into account. Much like Bigelow Gulch Road, that will make that a more desirable place for business development in the future, and we would embrace that. All of the work we're showing you today is based on residential urban growth areas. We haven't yet done anything that's exclusively non-residential yet, but this would be an area that would be a good candidate for that.
Okay, thank you.
And then one last piece, the red dot off highway, roughly off Highway 2 in the north central part of this slide, is a vacant parcel between the city of Spokane, city of Arrowhead Heights. The Pillar Rock project is to its immediate east. This is an area that, again, by itself, it has challenges. The southern part of it is under the J-Luz contours for developments that wouldn't be residential, it would be business development. But it does provide, again, another transportation corridor, east-west connectivity that Arrowhead Heights in particular is highly desirous of, north of, to have parallel routes north and south of Highway 2. Next, please. These last slides are more direct requests from their cities. Arrowhead Heights is on the left. They are, in effect, they're proposing a swap of taking their currently designated urban growth area on their north side, part of which is the county's ORV park, moving it to that lilac colored area on their west side. This is, it gives Arrowhead Heights a chance to grow in an area that is not influenced by the Air Force protections of J-Luz. So that is one of the few areas that they can grow in the near future that is not otherwise constrained. You can see that red dot of the parcel in between there and Pillar Rock a little more easily here. And then this would also have implications for business development as Craig Road breaks off of Highway 2 at that edge of the slide that goes down toward the interchange. On the right is Cheney. Again, a swap, in this case, removing 108 to 110 acres of the channel scablands that are southeast of the city, southeast of the railroad. They're not going to develop in residential, and so those will be de-designated, but they have a 10-acre co-housing project that is different from their other kind of housing projects. And so there would be a 10-acre UGA expansion on their northern edge just off of the highway. Pretty simple swap in that case. Deer Park is on the left. That looks like a fairly massive UGA expansion, and it is by acreage. That's roughly 3/4 sections of land that they're proposing, and then a little 40-acre piece at the bottom. The upper ones, though, if you look at them as kind of 3 pieces, the one on the upper right is a piece of land already owned by the city of Deer Park, and they use that for water. They have their wells, their producing wells come off that property. The 2 other quarter sections to the east or to the west, the city has acquired the water rights from those parcels and will be attaching them into their domestic service. Under our water law attorney has advised that for using water rights for domestic purposes, the water must come from a parcel within an urban growth area. I don't know why, but that's what we're working on right now. And if that's the case, we would grant Deer Park, or we would recommend that you grant Deer Park's recommendation to do this, but we would also allocate those with 0 residential allocation. So they would not be eligible for residential in the future. The current landowner intends to keep using them for agricultural purposes, but apparently was able to sell the water right to the city of Deer Park. So it's an anomaly of how we do this, but we think it makes sense for Deer Park, and we'll test it. We've told them if it gets challenged in a way that our council didn't anticipate, we'll have to find another way to help them. Medical Lake is on the right. Again, a swap. They've got 2 parts of their UGA, one on their north side, which is immediately south of the Fairchild runways, and then one on their far southwest corner attached to state hospital lands. Those would be de-designated, and the move to the pattern or path of development along the highway going out to Silver Lake. This is desirable from the city's perspective on how it wants to grow. We know Mayor Cooper wants to revitalize Medical Lake as a small resort community again, and this gives them a chance to build a new front door. It also gives them the opportunity of bringing sewer in particular out to the edge of Silver Lake. And I know she's working on a legislative solution that might allow that sewer to be used in essentially an urbanized lake shore, which would the sewer and water, by the way. And as we all saw very painfully, part of the devastation of the fire, there's no fire flow. There are no hydrants. There's no water out there to fight fire. The road was one way in, one way out, so emergency vehicles couldn't really get access. This would be a longer term development scheme to provide safe living for that corridor of Medical Lake. So that is the nuts and bolts of the UGA discussion itself. We've listened. We will go back and listen to the recording again, and then we'll be providing direction to our EIS team. One of them is here today. Rachel Granrath is with Kimley Horn. She's leading up the EIS work, and so she wanted to be able to listen and answer any questions if you had them about that. And if there are no other questions specifically about this, we can go on. We have done some work with Commerce to try to understand how we can reconcile all of our growth projections when the 2 big cities are behind the county in their analysis in that sense. the city of the Valley is just starting at EIS, so they're going to be well behind our planning. We simply can't wait for their results. We have to make these assumptions on that UGA going forward. But there is a process that Commerce has issued guidance on called target reconciliation. It's used in Snohomish County and King County. I've talked with Daryl, one of their senior attorneys in King County, and aside from saying, we just have a new executive, so the entire senior staff is running around here trying to figure out what's going on. He goes, yes, we use this process and among our various communities. What it does is it's something that if we put it, so I'll put it this way, that would be part of our countywide planning policies. So that it would be there, for future use. We are recommending this because we see that we're out of sync with at least the two big cities. As we've pointed out, and you have seen, the city of Spokane in their land capacity analysis mathematically is claiming capacity for 66,000 residents without changing their borders. And that is a major expansion from the 32 or 33,000 that was forecast in the 2015 land capacity analysis. So 10 years of growth, the borders haven't changed, but the capacity has dramatically increased by more than 2.5 times. Further, the city notes in their LCA that does not take into account their more recent VOCA and housing initiatives that have increased the density as well. And so if those are factored in later, that would increase that number even beyond where it is today. That has been challenged by us a little bit, not the numbers, because the math certainly works, but the implication of that. In the city's land capacity analysis, which we can share with you, it shows, among other things, what's called a heat map of future densities throughout the city. It reflects the fact that West Central neighborhood, more than 1/3 of that is already zoned for residential high density, but it's all small, single family, historic neighborhood homes. Is the city realistically going to raise that entire neighborhood for multifamily housing anytime in the next 20 years? We don't think that is a feasible solution. It shows the central portions, North Hill, South Hill, moving into as much as 7 to 9 to 10 units on average of density over that period of time. That's a significant amount of infill for an existing residential pattern. They haven't yet shown us as we keep saying, shown us their work other than the LCA math. We're hoping their EIS, which they indicated at the steering committee, they might be publishing that as soon as before the end of the month. That would be where they would have to demonstrate their concurrency on infrastructure, on capital facilities, transportation, and even the small things, Spokane schools. I mean, there's a really capacity of 66,000 new residents, for the school district. We've, as you know, we've established a relationship with all of the superintendents. We meet with them quarterly, give them updates on this planning process. And Meade and Cheney schools have been incredibly grateful to be at the table because they have, the North Metro is going to impact Meade schools, West Central or West Plains will impact Cheney schools. So schools, fire districts, and other things are a big part of these growth areas, and the city has really big numbers, and they just haven't shown us yet what that looks like in reality. This process, sorry, is a big introduction to why we need this process. If we can't agree on where those numbers are before we adopt our plans, meaning really in the next 6 months, then we're going to go ahead and adopt our plans. But this target reconciliation is a process by which you can go back after the plans are adopted and move the allocations of population and housing around to be balanced with the community's ability to actually serve and build them. Is it a stick? Yeah, it is. But we're just not seeing the progress yet of being able to confidently understand where the county has to accommodate for growth if the city can't really support its growth. And the city of the Valley has also said recently they don't believe they can accommodate their population and housing allocations as well. In a simple way, what that means is if they can't account for it in some way, then those numbers go back into the bucket, and the county, like we do this first round, the county would reallocate those to places that have capacity to do that, or if not, they would be part of the county's unincorporated UGA allocation. What we're concerned about is the impression that if the city or if either of the cities have to give back population or housing allocations, and that affects urban growth area boundaries or urban growth area densities, that's going to be a red flag to any organization going, well, this is an excuse for the county to change its UGA boundary. And so we need something that we can defend and say, no, it's not that, it's this process, because these could not be handled with the levels of service at least in the two big cities. The other cities are either not, they're saying they can meet their allocations, or their numbers are too small to be anything to worry about. But the two big cities are not yet there.
So when do we see the assumptions that the city is making to support their numbers and stuff? Because I had a conversation with Cathcart last week at steering committee. And while they project that they can get 40 units to a standard residential lot, their minimum lot size doesn't allow them to get over 2. So if they're projecting 4 and they can only achieve 2, then they've overestimated by factor. And I was there when we projected so much density for the centers that never materialized. In fact, out of 28 neighborhoods, I think 26 of them said, oh, not in our backyard. I think you got some in Garland and some up in Regal. But other than that, those are the only 2 areas that I'm aware of that actually have increased density anywhere close to what the centers and corridors projected for those centers. So when do we see the assumptions? And I know that they've got a real challenge with capital facilities. They just finished the stormwater plan, and stormwater plan was predicated upon 60% lot coverage area, and now they're talking about exceeding that dramatically. Where are they going to put the water? And how are they going to satisfy the EPA with regard to what they can dump in the river?
We will see what they have when they publish their draft EIS. And if we find that that is not providing sufficient answers, we will ask for more assumptions. The county has a particularly good team to evaluate this. You and I and Amber, we were all, we've got a lot of city alumni that can look at these things and have a memory of that. We have a public works director that was head of engineering. We've got our CEO that was in public works. So we've got the ability to evaluate that pretty effectively once we see what's there. And if it's insufficient, we will ask for more information. Or, worst case scenario is we will start to make assumptions that we will put into our EIS analysis and say, well, then what if we have to move from 34,000 residents in the unincorporated area to 40,000 to pick up this allocation, what is that going to do for everything that we just showed you on the screen, for infill, for new development? We really need to know that before we can button up the county's plan.
Well, and the other part of it is that their numbers, as I understand it, are predicated upon the idea that they're going to meet their housing through rentals as opposed to home ownership.
And from what we see, that seems to be the case, yes.
And it flies in the face of the Growth Management Act.
Not to defend any part of that, but certainly the land price factor of that is going to be a huge impact. And as we've heard, and those of you on the steering committee heard from the builders last week, the Growth Management Act, by definition, is a market constraint. It draws a boundary around it and says, that's it. That's all the land you've got. So what does that do to the price of land? It instantly increases the land price, because that's the only place you can develop. If that's the case, the ability of developing affordable housing that is an ownership product is exceedingly difficult. And if you're in a city that's already fully built out, it's gonna be a challenge. Can you build, $500,000 townhouse? Sure, no problem. But can you build $200,000 townhomes? Almost no. And so that's, yeah, there are lots of contradictions in the Growth Management Act. The very presumption of not expanding your UGA because it's sprawl is foolish in the sense of now there's a climate and resiliency element to this. And we have a market next door that has no regulations effectively. So if we can't develop neighborhoods that people want to buy and live in, Post Falls is going to boom. And all sorts of things are happening there. Now we've got more traffic on I-90. We've got more vehicle miles. We've got greenhouse gas emissions that we could have contained if we had more compact development on this side. On top of it, from Kootenai County's perspective, my counterpart over there, Dave, is very interested in working with us on some of the natural and environmental aspects of planning because he sees the disadvantage, a huge danger of 1,500 new homes going in Post Falls, all on septic systems, all sitting on top of the aquifer, on sandy soils for the most part. All of these pieces that are contradictory are very hard to work with.
The other thing that was shared at the. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead and then.
The other thing that was shared with the steering committee was the realtors conducted a leakage analysis and identified that on an annual basis, Spokane County loses to Kootenai County $950 million of economic activity a year. So, I mean, it is not, and you look at the stress that city of Spokane went through, we go through, other jurisdictions go through. Imagine what would happen if that $950 million of economic activity stayed here in Spokane County instead of being leaked across the state line.
And so, not to get too much into philosophy, but the reason, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Is it all right if we move on from philosophy?
Yes.
Okay, so explain to me so the couple things. The city, you said, is going to come out with their draft EIS in the next month.
That's what Tyrrell told me at the steering committee. I thought they were further behind, but that's good news. We'll be able to see.
So they'll be looking at their transportation impacts, their infrastructure impacts.
Correct.
So that will give us a better sense of what actually they'll be able to defend, because they would have to defend the state of commerce, their numbers as well. Correct.
They will. However, if those numbers affect the urban growth area, that's a decision that falls on you, falls on the Board of County Commissioners. And that would be the basis for any future appeal. And that appeal and that litigation lands on this table, not across the river.
So the target reconciliation, you're proposing that we adopt that in the countywide planning policies.
Yes.
From what we discussed at the steering committee meeting, that is a process that's been used in what are recognized as buildable lands.
Yeah.
Counties that Commerce has allowed them to build and do their planning process a little differently. I think they get some more flexibility, but they also have to report to Commerce frequently.
Yeah, there's a lot more detail. And the buildable lands analysis, in a sense, forces the cities and the counties to go through this reconciliation upfront, because they're done on a multi-county basis for the most part, and by size. Spokane County really should be using that process. We talked about it with the steering committee a few years ago. There was no support for it, and we didn't have time to find it in those days. We're going to at least bring that up again with all of you after we get through with this and talk about implementing that in the next 5-year period. But yes, the reconciliation is used by Snohomish and King County, and they're 2 of the 6 counties that use buildable lands.
Okay, so I guess I'm just wondering if we're allowed to use that process if we haven't been recognized by Commerce as a buildable lands county.
We have not seen any direct linkage to that. So then there.
Because the idea behind those counties is they kind of have an agreement between their cities and county.
Yes.
And they all work together to kind of oversee their planning process.
I wouldn't make it all, sunshine.
And no, probably
Yeah.
not, but there's like an interlocal agreement or
The
something.
buildable lands process is more detailed, but it has a more collaborative mandate to it.
Anyway, so those are just questions that we didn't have time to ask all those last week at the steering committee.
We're proposing this, we're gonna look at it with, with our own council, we're collaborating with King and Snohomish, how did you use it, what's it used for? If we have to craft this in a way that is exclusively for, Spokane County reconciliation, we'll bring that back before you after the first of the year. This is not urgent, and if at the moment, what its value today is it's started a new conversation that we wanted to have for a long time. So if we can't get what we need to understand how the cities are growing, here's a process that's used elsewhere in the state that's recognized that we didn't have to make it up. Now that we're talking about this, it's like, well, maybe that'll start the conversation on the other side. So there's some advantage.
Got a little background. Part of the settlement agreement was that we would take the option of doing buildable lands back to the steering committee, which we did. In fact, I led that effort. And all three parties, the county, City of Spokane Valley, initially agreed to fund the foundational work to start the buildable lands process. And we went out, we got a contractor that was willing to do the work and everything like that. So we're going to split the cost 3 ways. And in the 11th hour, the City of Spokane pulled out and said, we're not interested. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. And the county and the City of the Valley said, we're not going to pay for a study that the City of Spokane is not going to be party to. So that fell to the wayside, but it did satisfy our agreement, the settlement agreement that we had with Commerce. So it's something that we can, as a local level, without any involvement with Commerce, decide we're either going to do or not going to do. And we've decided by default that we're not going to do it.
What year was that?
Oh, geez, that would have been
15, probably.
15, 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just, anecdotally, the city of Spokane has expressed interest in pursuing, or at least looking at the buildable lands process again. So we think that door is open for a discussion between now and the next 5 years. But that is truly a separate thing from this reconciliation.
Maybe.
They could go together. We feel this is a tool that, since it already exists in statute, in Commerce's guidance, that we don't have to make something up and we can use it. If the steering committee wants to send forward a recommendation that they don't support it, we would bring that recommendation back to you, and it would still be your inputs. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you for your patience.
That's all.
And just what the decision to do the buildable lands analysis process is actually not the decision of the steering committee, it's our decision. We went to them to make a recommendation. The settlement agreement had us going to the steering committee with 2 recommendations. One was marketable market factor, whether we wanted to change that or not. The other one was buildable lands, and the steering committee rejected both of them.
Thank you. We will see you again in January. We have set up tentatively a monthly plan update briefing for you to try to not have a more overwhelming 90-minute sessions from time to time. But starting in January, we'll be bringing back the actual chapters that comprise the plan itself, and talking about each of those, sometimes multiples. But we'll touch base with you every month through July, when we should be starting to button this thing up.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're on, are you gonna, so now we go to miscellaneous. Jeff, are you gonna talk on the Axon contracts? I mean, over. He means. You might be intrigued. Well, we'll go. Mike, are you gonna- Yeah, why don't you come up and talk about that? We might have an executive session.
Yes.
I'm on as well, Mike.
Maybe if you.
You have a few.
I'm trying to hurry us along.
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
Trying to hurry us along. Just a few.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. I have some good news, actually, for a change.
Awesome, we could use it.
So,
Oh, time.
during the workday transition, they discovered from phase two, which is actually 2016 fund dollars to Jackie Van Warmer period, that there was a 10% increase, 10% indirect cost allocation that was never spent. And it amounts to $161,760. And so we've been looking for a way to try to roll those funds over into something that we could use. MacArthur is agreeable to that if it relates to, impacting the jail and people spending time, impacts the justice system or mental health issues. So one of the things, actually a couple of things that have come to mind here. One of them is a wayfinding system that I'm gonna let Pat Bell talk about. That is, will aid individuals coming to the public safety building in areas of high traffic with the language barriers they encounter when they come to our facility. So, Pat, you want to dive in here, please?
Yes, good morning, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Pat.
Great. Hope everyone's doing well. Shuris is on as well. A couple of quick things relating to the project. We took over about a month ago. And I know it's gotten a little bit of a slow start as the money was talked about or dedicated earlier this year. Looking now at this grant opportunity and trying to accelerate our timeline. The principal opportunity here I think is around wayfinding, particularly as it relates to 4 buildings on the campus. So the scope of the project, as I've briefed or shared with a few of you, is wayfinding and language access. The language access components, we now have the list from the courts of the 10 top languages that they have adopted access for. And so we will be getting with purchasing now and setting out our requirements for what we need to see in bids. But wayfinding and language access were the top 2 things that we're after. We've also done a little bit of a look at some of the directional signage that exists on campus. We've talked with Ashley Callan and John Witter about the trial and court hearing displays that they have and the ability to search with the court viewer. We've been in touch with IT. So IT and facilities are aware. Facilities has provided us floor plates of buildings. We're trying to calculate now the number of endpoints between these wall-mounted displays, which will be inside lobbies, and then to those points in the building. The other interesting feature is these kiosks or wall-mounted displays will need to be connected, obviously, to the internet and power, but they will also need to have an endpoint with each other. So you could go from one, you could see coming into the courthouse using the display. It's telling you needs to go to public safety building. And so you walk over to public safety building and now you see a very familiar looking display and you engage with it and you get to the court hearing you need to get to. You can imagine somebody coming to the courthouse and needing language access, for instance, in Spanish, Arabic, or Ukrainian, Russian, being able to just quickly tap on a button, have the screen display in their language so they can find their way to court or to see the court hearings for the day or to find the courtroom or to find the service desk and be given quick directions to get to that service counter. A nice alignment here is that we would try and capture as many county services as possible. Certainly the court hearings and the wayfinding around the courthouse and the campus would be primary. But other county services, say you come to campus and you're trying to pay your sewer bill, and you walked in the public safety building, but you need to be over in the public works building, it would show you step by step where you need to go. And then when you get to public works, you know, we have signage there that says sewer billing on second floor. But you could use that display and it would point you to take the elevator and go up to the second floor. So the overall goal is to improve customer satisfaction and reduce confusion and also wait times. Of course, we have these two navigators that Mike has piloted that we plan to engage with as well. We have a list of frequently asked questions that the court gets, or the court service desks get, or the clerk's office gets, and we'll be taking a look at that as well. But the system itself, we're trying to go for simple, more kind of app-based, something that's easy to interact with, touch, you know, a few tiles, a few tabs, not an overwhelming amount of information. But the software we've been looking at so far seems very promising, highly interactive, highly intuitive, and there are a number of service providers in this space. So I don't think we'll have any trouble finding all those services wrapped into one. But in terms of costs, you know, we're looking in the $75,000 range. Each unit, depending on, you know, what it's going to cost, maybe between $6,000 to $10,000 for the actual displays with the interactive capabilities, about $1,000 a month for the software. And the unknown right now is just the configuration cost. What will it cost to get all of our endpoints, data, geolocation maps, and languages, preferred languages loaded into the system? So I'll stop there.
Questions on that component? Okay.
No, and just so you know, I talked to Charlotte Nemec over at Canopy Credit Union because there's been concerns when I, with a lot of library meetings I've had, that we don't have the cash machine, the ATM in the courthouse. There was some breakage and they took it out and weren't sure if it was worth it. So they did put in their budget to bring one back. So, which would be helpful because there's some things that need cash in the courthouse and people are having to go out of the courthouse, go over to Public Works and then come back. So they're going through security 3 times. So hoping that that will be helpful
That will be
as we navigate through all of this for.
And all this is in concert with those court navigators that are just doing a remarkable job of helping our citizens get around to all the different locations. So looking forward to the ATMs as well.
Yeah.
Those type of things. So in the law library, I mean, they just serve so many functions. It's been a really good program. The second use of it came up actually in a board meeting of the ability to do an evaluation of our justice software systems as an overall. JMI, which is Justice Management Institute, does that, and they offered to come in and they look at 5 primary things. One would be an analysis of our current systems, analysis of their incapabilities and incompatibilities, an analysis of what manual practices are being done because these don't serve the functions, you know, like paper carrying paper, going to some location. And then make recommendations on how to improve our systems, leaving it with essentially a blueprint to move forward with. So those are the 2 purposes I'd like to do, use this funds for.
And MacArthur's happy to let us use those.
Well, it starts here. I want to make sure that that the board didn't have some other use for it, and then I'll move forward with I'm sure in talking with Nita, who's the MacArthur person, that it will go through pretty well. It's gonna fly through, but I still have to ask for permission. It's all subject to them.
I think that's a great way to.
Yep.
Suspense.
Jeff, did you want to add anything to that or nothing? Well, okay then.
Is there enough head nods for Mike to request that?
I think that's great to use those funds. I guess you said that JMI said that they would assist us with the software and kind of our system analysis. Do they have consultants that they would bring in then for us?
Yes,
So they would enter into those contracts.
they would. That's, yeah. So
They would use these funds to do it.
they would use these funds to do it. And so what I'm trying to do is get Pat settled on where we're gonna be on the wayfinding. And then I'll know what
Then
amount of
we-
funds I can
yeah,
allocate
okay.
together. Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
super. Thank you.
Great.
And for the Axon, you guys had presentations last week. Prosecutor, public defender, and CFD. The covering the cost, I've talked with Colin and exchanged communications with Victoria, but next year that. The thought is to use their acronym now, the state grant. That gives them funding. This would be an allowed use. Colin called to double check somewhere in the civil office. You're not allowed to use it on IT if it's more administrative type IT, but you are allowed to use it on IT when it's helping the services being provided. The thought process of using those funds is we don't have an out year solution to pay for this. We'd have roll forward funds we could use for 26. But if we don't start with using the state grant, there's no supplementation language in it. So if you don't start with it, it wouldn't be an option in 27 going forward. So by using the state grant in 26, it allows it as an option rolling forward. The thought would be we would still roll forward funds from their unspent 25 to 26 to keep their 26 budget essentially whole when it's passed.
Because they have unspent
Yeah.
grant funds.
They both have, it's about 120 in the PD side and about 15 on the CFD side on the amount of funds used needed to close the gap. This is, I believe, queued up on the 2 o'clock for tomorrow. Well, last week you talked the substance, we hadn't come up with a funding source yet. So that's what we work through. And if everybody's good with that, it would eventually pass tomorrow.
That's a great solution to that. And I think using those funds because it enhances what they're doing.
Should save time.
So. Yeah. And then they get started January 1 versus waiting.
So we're still only paying, isn't it like 3 or 4 months next year where the contract actually goes up?
Yeah, my understanding is part of the incentive Axon is given to sign early is they will give them the enhanced through September.
The whole
Even
year.
though they'll be only paying the former rate through September, then the rate would go up the last 3 months of the
Got
year
it.
for the new contract.
Scott?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to see if Devin could confirm, maybe not right now, but by the end of the, before the legislative session, is there non-appropriation language included in that contract? So if, for example, we get the, another year or two of the PD dollars come from the state, but suddenly we don't, is there an out clause, if you will, for non-appropriation language?
I'll confirm that, either non-appropriation or termination for convenience.
I believe there's non-appropriation. I don't think termination for convenience was. But we need to double check for sure.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Thank you. Then any other miscellaneous items before we have 5 executive sessions? So, yes, stay. Scott? Or Pat? Sorry.
Really quickly, I think we have a proclamation coming up. I see Martha Lou there. We have a proclamation for January. Martha Lou can mention briefly a request has come in.
Yes, I believe from Lutheran Community Services. Yes.
They have requested a proclamation to declare January as Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And since it hasn't been decided yet whether or not you're meeting on the 6th, that means, oh, you are on the 6th. Oh, well, okay. Then they would receive this proclamation. It's been approved by Chair CUNY. And
Just need a couple other head nods for it, so.
okay.
So yes, we'll put it on for the 6th and that way we do get it for the month.
All right, thank you very much. I'll get it to Gina.
Pat?
One other quick item, Chair Cooney, I'll touch base with you offline. We have a few pending media requests about the county's legislative agenda that we can dispense with today. And then for tomorrow, just a reminder for the 2 o'clock, we have the founder of Medico will be there to speak to the item on the agenda. And we'll also have a press release. Thank you for the approval of a quote for that. And we'll have that ready to go. We can also talk about potential media availability following the meeting, anticipating media interest.
Okay. Yeah, and we just want to make sure that we just take that one separately.
Civil legal team is always listening and watching. Summer just confirmed that there is termination. Non-appropriation language in Axon contracts.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Summer.
Any? Mr. French, miscellaneous?
Well, at a request, we have a PFAS task force meeting this Wednesday, and I know that Scott, you and Kyle and others have been working on first round of getting POET systems installed. And I was wondering if one of you could be so kind as to be there Wednesday night to discuss how you're going to do that or what you're going to do. It'd be nice to have that come from somebody actually involved in it as opposed to coming from me. But, or Ben could talk about it or whoever. I just was hoping that maybe somebody from staff could talk about how you're going to execute that.
Yeah, I
Sure.
think we could do that. Go ahead, Kyle, because you're closer to the RFQ process.
Yeah, well, one of us will certainly be able to discuss it at the meeting here, but
Okay.
yeah, the intent is to get a pilot out and get qualifications solicited from her so that we can do parallel testing for installations.
Okay.
Provide some information on an approach.
Terrific. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay,
Madam Chair, we have 5 executive sessions today. First session will be 20 minutes on RCW 4230-110, pending and potential litigation, no action expected. CEO Scott Simmons, Jeff McMorris, Devin Crowder, Matt Folsom, Kyle Tuig, Brent Badabo, and Meredith Weinberg. She'll be appearing via Zoom. Second executive session.
pay attention. So if anyone's doing Zoom, we need to pay attention so we can figure that out. So
She was on, but she's not on anymore.
Make sure she jumps on right now. Second executive session is 10 minutes, pending potential litigation, no action. Scott Simmons, Jeff McMorris, Wes Zickow, Heather Arnold, George Dahl, Matt Folsom, Devin Kurda.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just running through this. 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Okay.
Third executive session is also 10 minutes, pending a potential litigation, no action. Scott Simmons, Jeff McMorris, Devin Kurda, Matt Folsom. Fourth executive session is 30 minutes, pending a potential litigation, no action. Scott Simmons, Ashley Cloud, Jeff McMorris, Mike Sparber, Josh Grote, Devin Kurda, and Matt Folsom. Finally, the last executive session is 20 minutes, pending and potential litigation, no action. Scott Simmons, Jeff McMorris, Devin Kurda, Matt Folsom.
Again, how long on that one? I was trying.
20 minutes. So. No pizza.
Scheduling note. I and potentially Commissioner French have a meeting at noon. I want to make sure we get to one topic.
Yeah, so I got a long line for a meeting as well. So we need to make sure we're just moving along.
Okay.
Try to keep us going. So that's,
Are we covering the topic?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of?
so it's an hour and a half. So we're hoping to be
Others,
done soon.
Are there some that could move like
They're probably, there's,
the one?
Hey, hi folks.
oh, 1 second.
Like the one with HR, maybe, could that move to tomorrow or is that needed?
It needs to be okay. I think
And
Let's try and power
let's
through.
See what we can do.
Yeah.
So we are going to go into executive session we're anticipating an hour and 30 minutes, but we're hoping to be done sooner than that, by noon. So, it's for those 5 pending and potential litigation reasons with the people that were just spoken to. So, we will be adjourned for the morning after that executive sessions. Thank you all very much. and We'll see you back tomorrow.